What's going on, everyone? I'm going to welcome you back to another episode of Market Watch Mondays. This is a special episode because we have an honored guest, and it is JetPackGalileo, 457-year-old astronomer who's taken time out of his busy old-ass day to talk to me about football, man. And I've been excited about this because Jetpack and I have gone back and forth on Twitter quite a bit. I'm a big fan of his work. I'm a big fan of what they're doing at the FF Astronauts. That entire group, that entire squad is doing some really good stuff, which I'm a big fan of. So, it was really fun picking his brain, just understanding the film aspect of fantasy football. As you guys know, that's not my strength. That is not my forte. So as a result, what I do is I try and surround myself and learn from those who are much better at it and much more advanced at it than me. And I personally learned a crap load from this conversation. I hope you guys do too. And, as always, if you guys do like it, just make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up, hit that little notification bell as well so you know when these types of videos are coming your way, which is basically every week. You guys hop on and check out the Patreon as well. Patreon.com/OurPack, the Wolfpack Patreon, which is, like I always say, man, it's for hardcore Dynasty gamers. You're going to get insight from folks like this, like JetPackGalileo, that kind of give you both angles. I like to approach the game using the analytics and film, and as well as layering on game theory on top. So that's what we're all about in the Patreon. It's a hardcore Dynasty gamer thing. If it's not for you, totally understand. You probably want to check out the BDG normal Patreon as well. Great. We got Nick, Noah, rest of the BDG fam in there helping you guys with everything from redraft to season long. And then obviously make sure you guys go check out the BDG guide, the rookie draft guide, which is already out now, and we'll kind of continue adding to that as we go. It's going to be a live, living thing, breathing thing that gets updated with strategy, with different articles, with write-ups, what have you. So it's going to be exciting times. It's going to be a great offseason. We're excited. The draft is going to finally be here next week, man. I tell you, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the draft so we can quash some of the shitty takes that are out there on Twitter. But you will not be getting any shitty takes here on this episode because it's going to be all gas, all good, in the words of my good friend Ray G, man. It's going to be good shit only in this, and you're going to be learning a lot just like I did. So if you guys enjoy the episode, that's all. What's happening, y'all? Welcome back. Another episode, another week, another dollar. Market Watch Mondays. You know what it is. I am your host at Mike Me Up with 2 P's on Twitter. Today, we have a very special guest, someone that I have been a big fan of. An OG Twitter to me, at least, when I was a nobody. He was someone that I was chopping up with. But it's JPG, JetPackGalileo, astronomer. How old are you now? 450 years old, I guess.
Yeah, 457.
457. Who's counting? Yeah. Look, man, it's great to have you on the show. We've chopped it up a couple times. I'm pretty sure our first engagement on Twitter was me being a dick, just going back with you, and you were patient enough to kind of talk with me, and then eventually we worked into I call this a positive relationship. You're definitely at top of my list when I'm thinking about.
Oh yeah, you're the man.
I'm learning about how to interpret film and film grades and, study movement and study players. Like I bring it up all the time. I think not just you, but also we'll talk about him a little bit later, but J Moyer, another guy over at FF Astronauts. Both of you guys, I think, are really paving the way, so to speak, for the film industry. But, that's enough of me kissing ass. Maybe you can just give the folks a little bit intro of yourself, a little bit of your background, how you got started in Twitter, and where people can find you. What are some of the plugs? Because I'm sure my audience is going to want to look you up right after this episode.
Well, first of all, awesome getting to know you over the last year or so, right?
Yeah,
that's been really cool, and seeing how you've grown and the Wolfpack and all that stuff. Awesome build you have. But yeah, so I'm with the Fantasy Football Astronauts. We just launched our rookie guide. So for us, that's a living project that we're really excited about. Heaney, one of the leaders in terms of how he's building all that and putting together analytical models. He designed the whole back end for that thing. I think it's one of the better guides on the internet, probably the best. And so just the way that we're building that, the main concept or the main idea of what we're trying to do just as a company, it all kind of manifests itself in that guide. So in terms of being able to look at a player's film, understand what's going on, and quantify what you're seeing, and taking those concepts of, hey, there's more to a player's profile than just his dominator rating, but then also combining those film concepts with other, things like market share and all that kind of stuff, and putting that into, numbers that you can actually quantify and measure and understand So for us, being able to do that was a big part of our goal of the astronauts altogether, but then also in this guide. So to take player eval at its to the fullest potential it can be. So that's our latest thing was the rookie guide. We also have a film room that pulls videos from YouTube and makes everything easy to watch, so you can scout all the prospects. We just added defensive players. That's another big thing for us. But yeah, those would be the main things. But that's the vision.
Yeah, I'm gonna link all that stuff for you guys in the comments. RB Keeney, that's at RBKEENEY. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen me shout him out a couple of times. Well worth it. Criminally underfollowed. Only got 2,000 followers. Should easily have more followers than me.
Yeah,
but yeah, just the brains behind that. And I've been in this guide a little bit. I'm gonna tell you guys right now. It looks fucking clean, man. It looks great. And Nick will kill me for saying this because we have a competing product and we have a draft guide as well. But man, you guys, honestly, this is one of the best products I've ever seen. I'm personally, and I don't really tout products. You know me, JPack. I don't really like go and kiss ass for people that I don't really like. And I'm saying this because I'll put my name behind this product. I think it's a really, really cool thing what you guys are doing. And it's definitely different.
Yeah, I appreciate
it's
that.
Definitely unique, and it's definitely clean. And you got the user experience counted for, which honestly I think might be something that people lack. A lot of people put out guides and like they're just like hard to use, or like they put out guides like here's 50,000 words. It's like, who the fuck wants to read 50,000 words these days? Nobody. So it's good that you guys kind of have it easy to consume. Big fan of that. I've been a big fan of the film room as well. Like you said, it's very easy to kind of just get in there and look up prospects. I by no means am a film expert, even though I am now self-proclaimed pro scout on Twitter. That is not.
That was today, right?
Yeah, that's today. That's not my true nature. So having tools like that is super awesome. I mean, I think you're one of the more, I would call you a very balanced analyst, right? You don't really just look at numbers. You don't just look at film. But when I think of you, I still think of you as a predominantly film-based analyst that actually knows how to use numbers. That's how I think about you. Whether that's fair or not, I don't care. It's my show. That's what I'm going with. So, but I want to understand, how did you get into film analysis?
I'm a football player, so that's the first thing, right?
Oh, shit, awesome.
Just watching other football players. I think that's a natural thing. A big part of it is just appreciation for what are these elite athletes doing? How do they look? How are they processing things? And just taking concepts that anybody can learn while they're playing ball and apply that to, well, this means because he can do this, right? Or because he's thinking this, and I can kind of put myself in those shoes. Then I know that he has this capability, or he can be something more. And so I think from a film standpoint, you can probably link into different edges than you would get when you're looking at like an analytical profile and all that kind of stuff. So it's not to say I don't care about production entirely, and those aren't good ways of identifying player talent. Everybody kind of eventually feels like they're going to have the same thing, right? We all know, high market share, breakout age early. Those are the guys we want, right? What's your edge beyond that? Once we've reached this point now where the market is saturated with all of this info on how to put together a production profile for a guy, right? And we all are thinking now the same thing. Everybody's saying the same stats, touting the same thing. You're going to need an edge there. And so for us, that's the knowledge of the actual game itself. Trying to tune into what are coaches saying and what are players thinking.
What position did you play?
I played tight end, receiver, a little bit of quarterback. High school, college. One of the things now I've enjoyed making fun of defensive players. I played a little defense in high school, but they're so uncoordinated. Keep dropping they drop every pick. It's just that's my new thing now. Finding all these clutch interceptions that get dropped.
I love that.
DBs are a joke.
That's awesome, because I'm gonna throw this to you right now. I played DB in high school, and it's I'm not even offended at all, because I was awful. I mean, first of all, I was in Canada, so it's not even real football. It's Canadian football. It's kind of a joke. And the reason why I got on was because my school sucked. Obviously, otherwise someone like me would never get on the field. But I was a starting quarterback, and just like you said, one of my first plays, I dropped an interception. Damn, that's why Mike's not playing receiver, because he got no hands.
I don't mean anything by that, right? Like I played safety a little bit, and defense is fun, and you have to be extra reactionary, and you have all this other talent. But like the reason why you're on defense is because you can't catch the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree as a defender. So really exciting pickup for you guys. We talked about Ryan Keeney, another guy, J Moyer, at J Moyer on Twitter. For those of you that don't know who that is, make sure you get on there and follow him. In my eyes, one of the best film people on the web. I started following him in my beginning days, and his videos, especially his running back breakdown videos, where he showed like the gaps and where running back should be going, how they should be using leverage. I learned a ton from just watching those videos. So in my eyes, one of the best. What's it been like working with him? I was super pumped when you guys had him. I thought that, again, just another great fit. You guys are picking up a lot of good talent. Like what are some things that you think the best things you've learned from working with J Moyer over the past, however many months he's been with you?
Yeah, he's brilliant. I think unique in terms of how specific he can be with what's going on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a doctor and he's a coach, right?
Yep.
And so he has all these other talents that kind of inform who he is. And so that personality and those conversations are really insightful. So whenever we're talking about a player and all that, he's a fun guy to talk to. But I think the one thing for me that's been good to learn from him is how he sees the game from a vision standpoint for running backs, and learning like what to look for when you're going through the line of scrimmage and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, as a receiver or even as a tight end blocking, you understand basic concepts, but you don't understand what the running back is reading. And so to be able to tune into how he sees the game, that's been really cool because again, same kind of idea, right? I can look at Antonio Gibson and I can look at Jonathan Taylor and say, hey, these are big and fast guys, right?
Yep.
But if we look at a smaller guy that maybe has been successful, who's small and slow, but still has success, there's something there that you can lock into that you wouldn't be able to understand if you just looked at his 40 time or whatever. Yeah, just that concept, I think, in terms of how does a running back process what's going on behind the line of scrimmage, that's been big to learn from him.
Do you guys do like film breakdown sessions together, like just in the background?
Yeah, we'll send clips to each other. It's good. He's a fun guy to be around. But he's starting to do live stuff. So hey, how do we get just to Jay to be able to analyze film for people online? So we're dropping a YouTube video later this week. He'll break down. He's comparing Javonte Williams and Michael Carter and what they did against Miami. So yeah, stuff like that we're hoping to grow into.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I mean, I know the Nerds guys did some stuff like that with Garrett Price and Nick Will in them. So it'd be great to see J Moyer get on there. Maybe you get on there as well and see you guys break it down. I think that'd be excellent content. So I mean, we talk about it all the time. I mean, Twitter nerds are always online arguing about fucking film versus analytics. Seems like every other day, nerds are putting on the glasses and calling film people stupid, and film people are putting on their rolling the tape and calling nerds with spreadsheets stupid. So I don't have the skills that you have to do both, I would say. What I do is I have a ton of respect for anyone that does film, right? Because I appreciate how much time it takes, two, how much experience like you actually need to do it properly, which is why I think people like you and Jay and like Angelo and people are like really dangerous, because people that can understand the film, break down the film, and also have the numbers. It's like that's like the type of person that I can't really compete with in my league. So, from your perspective, what do you think matters more? Do you think the advanced analytics matter more? Like, do you think the film matters the most? Like, which part of that plays the most in your process, and how do you kind of incorporate both?
Who the football player is matters, right? So you have this idea of there's an absolute truth out there.
Yep.
And there's many different ways for us to understand or identify how to get to that truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I look at a spreadsheet and I say, hey, all these guys who broke out early, that gives me a good hit rate.
Yep.
And you find a great player, that's fantastic. Do that and be reliable at that and repeat it and do it over and over and win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not you can take that and you can do the same thing with film, right? You say, hey, these guys, I know they have good vision behind the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they're not going to struggle when they get to the NFL if they have a bad offensive lineman or bad offensive line. And so being able to take a look at both sides of that and say, hey, what is the absolute truth that I'm after? I think to not lose sight of that's important. So it doesn't necessarily matter like what the means are for me to get there, but just that I end up hitting instead of missing.
Yeah.
And so, for me personally, I'm a film guy. I'm a football player, or that's the way that I'm thinking of these guys. And I think just generally speaking, all these coaches and everybody who's making a decision is really thinking the same thing. What does this guy do when he's on the field? Because nothing matters. Like as soon as you enter training camp, nothing that you did in college matters, right? It doesn't matter that DeVonta won the Heisman. It doesn't matter that Jamar Chase had 20 touchdowns that one year. It doesn't matter. It matters who he is. What's the absolute truth about how he moves and how he acts and how he thinks and how he works, right? That's what's going to present itself on the field in the NFL. And so, however you can get to that through, your spreadsheet, or you can get to that by watching film or even just watching highlights. You can get to some of those things. But I'm trying to identify who this player is.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, there's more than one way to win fantasy, and there's definitely more than one way to evaluate a player. So play to your strengths, which is what I try to do. And then, try and learn from others that are better than you at those things you're not good at, which is why I have you on the show right now. Something that I really liked last year when I was following you is you put out your film grades and you put out your film model. You kind of talked about the traits that you measure. And you said something along the lines of like measure that which cannot be measured. I might have butchered that quote. I don't know, but something along those lines. And I thought that was really cool because then you like kind of showed, look, here's my film grades pre-draft. And I think that's what's the most impressive is like, any analyst, any analytical based analyst is taking draft grade as an input, right? Because if they're not, they're missing a big input. And most of the time, that's their biggest input. And that's basically the film grade, right? It's like what the NFL scouts are telling you. So what you're doing and what you showed, I think last year was the JPG film grade was actually outperforming draft guide, right? Like so basically that tells me that model is really good and what you're doing definitely has some wheels and some steam to it. Like, have you made any adjustments to the way you build your film model and build your film grades this year, or are you kind of just running it back and going with what works?
Yeah, I revamped it totally this year. So proud of what I did in 2019 in terms of, hey, it's the first time I'm building something. It's the first time I'm objectifying something. And I think it might be one of the first people to do it out there that's actually, accountable to everybody and saying, hey, I'm making this public. You can measure this against things. So that's the first thing was just, hey, let me take that step into that world. But this year I revamped totally. I think because in 2020 I over exaggerated things, or I was too general on different ideas. And so what we're doing now, or what I'm doing now, and what the rest of our team is now doing, is we're taking five big grades and then we're breaking them down into little pieces and then grading those little pieces to a player, right? So it's one thing to be able to say, hey, does this guy run good routes? How am I going to grade that? And then it's another to say, what's this player's lateral agility like? What's this player do when he's on a comeback, right? How effective is he on with a double moves? All those kinds of things. And so to get into the detail, that pulls out some things for me that I would have missed before, or that I missed on a guy like Jalen Reagor, or I missed on a guy like Henry Ruggs, where I would overemphasize something and say, hey, like generally he could probably do pretty well at routes because he's fast, right? Or because he's shifty and he can make a cut. That's different than me being able to say like, okay, what does Jalen Reagor look like at the top of his curl route? And so now that I'm getting more specific, I'm even more confident in where we're at. So that's the grades that you'll see on my film grades in the rookie guide, those are the top 5 big grades. But I'm also going to release my own like private stuff where it's just smaller and getting into the little details. So I have 30 categories of traits that I'm following for receivers. I think it's like 25-ish for running backs. That's how I'm doing it now. It'll change and it'll morph over time. The main concept's going to stay the same.
So what you're telling me, and what I'm hearing is, as a future pro scout myself, it's going to be much harder to replicate the output of judging a wide receiver's route running ability if I have to break it down into these tiny details. That's what I'm hearing. I can't just talk about stems and trees anymore. I'm gonna have to talk about actual routes like curls and comebacks. Okay, so I gotta step up my game on that one. So be on the lookout. You got a competitor coming up. But I love to hear that. That's awesome. That's awesome. That I think the thing I really like about your process is, one, you have a process, which is more than I can say for a lot of film people on Twitter. Sure. But two, you're kind of showing the people like, hey, look, this is how the meat is made, and these are all the components I do, and have at it and do your best to kind of replicate what I do. I think that's really cool. I think that's the one thing where like, it's been tough. It's been tough for me to like really jump into the film community without guys like you and Angelo who are like more willing to be open and like talk about stuff. I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping, in the film community where it's like, hey, I have the all 22 film. This is my shit. Or like, you weren't a coach's son. Like, you don't know anything what you're talking about. It's like, you be more open about it. You're going to get more people. And all that's going to do is going to improve film across the board, right? As soon as you lift those gates open and give people access to information that you guys are doing now, you're gonna get more people that want to do it because it's just hard to do, man. Like, that's the thing. And that's what's really cool about what you guys are doing. So I have a ton of respect for that personally.
Yeah, no, it means a lot. Like Sage Rosenfels hopped on Twitter and he's like, nobody knows what they're talking about when they watch. It's just watching football, and it's not hard to learn, right?
Yeah.
Matt Waldman, the film guru that we all love, right? He didn't play, but he's fantastic. He's brilliant in the way that he like understands what's going on in the game, right?
Yeah.
And so you might be able to say like, oh, I played, so I have some experience, and that helps. But you can learn it, right? You're going to be a pro scout tomorrow. Or you're a pro scout today.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But it's not that hard, right? To really piece these things together. And I think that, the more that we encourage each other, or the more that we're like, hey, this is what I'm seeing, right? And we don't freak out about, somebody not seeing the same thing, then we can really, build something good. So that's the ultimate goal. And eventually, so with the rookie guide, what I'm hoping to turn that into we're calculating everything. I'm saying, hey, here's how I do my film grades, and then eventually we'll make spreadsheets so that people who are following us, they can make their own grades. We do competitions. Who's the best grader, right? All sorts of stuff like that.
That's super cool.
That's the ultimate goal.
I think that'll be awesome. I want to get. I mean, what do you think about? I don't know if you saw my tweet before, but I talked about age-adjusted film grades before. Kind of like taking that analytical model and being like, hey, as a freshman, here's what this guy graded out at. As a sophomore, here's what he graded out at. I thought that would be a really cool concept to implement, right? Like, is that something? Is that too stupid to think about? Is that just like not really realistic, or do you think there's maybe some legs to looking at film that way?
Yeah, I don't think it's a stupid idea. So the reason why I don't think about it that way is because I'm getting to, again, we're going back to that idea of what is the truth of who this player is when he enters the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily, it's different than a production profile.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the production profile, you're saying he's more valuable because he was good earlier.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm looking at the film of a player, all I care about is who he is now.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense, right? And so in some sense, like that could be valuable because, these guys who look good early, of course they're good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if a player looks good at any point in time,
mm-hmm.
And is, I think consistency is really the question there with the age stuff. That would be the main value is what can we do in terms of consistency, in terms of being able to see all that.
That's interesting.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Measure of consistency, so to speak. I never thought about that way, but when you put it that way, it kind of does make sense. All right, let's jump into some players. People are itching to kind of learn about where you have people. I want to start with quarterbacks because a lot of us nerds play super flex leagues. But also, I think you just have one of the more interesting rankings that are out there. And, you came at it, from your process. And I think, when I first saw it on Twitter, people all automatically have that wow factor and they're like, oh, wow, this is clickbait. But me knowing you and knowing your process, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I know this guy put in the work. So let me try and learn about what happened. So just for the viewers, let them know what your QB ranks are. What are your top 5 quarterbacks?
Yeah. So Justin Fields is one. He's actually locked in there for me. I'm pretty happy about having him there and fairly confident in that. And then right now I do have Zach Wilson 2, and then Trevor Lawrence is right there with him. So for me, it's like a 2A, 2B kind of deal, and then Trey Lance 4, and then Mac Jones 5.
So Justin Fields at 1, to me, it's not as spicy. I mean, I've been a big Justin Fields fan. Like, what are the things that you see in his game that makes you so comfortable putting him as your number 1? Because all I hear about on Twitter from the pros is how he can't process, he can't get past his first read. He's a 1-read quarterback. He takes too many sacks, like all the stuff that he can't do. I don't hear enough about what the things he can do are. So I would love to hear you make your pitch for Justin Fields as the QB1.
Yeah, he's a total baller, and he can do whatever you ask him to do. There's a lot of people now. So the deal with Justin Fields is, I think, just generally, all of the like, oh, Justin Fields can't read progressions or whatever, that was some campaign to get Justin Fields to fall to the Niners or something like that. I'm fully on board with, if Justin Fields is there to the Niners at 3, they will take him, right? If Justin Fields is not there, then maybe they do take Mac Jones. Maybe they like Mac Jones more than Zach Wilson or something like that. But I'm honestly not buying any of this Justin Fields is not good, that people actually think that. Because when you watch him play, he's great. He can do whatever you ask. So if we're looking, and to me, it's relevant because also with the film grades, right? You're going to find different traits, right? And you don't weight them all equally. There are different things that matter to you and to me, right? And there's different things that matter to different people. And I think this is how you get into the conversation about like why you would like a Zach Wilson or why you'd like a Justin Fields over Trevor Lawrence, right? So big picture, right? Trevor Lawrence does everything that you want him to do. He's going to be a great quarterback. I have no questions about that, right? Anybody who has him at number 1, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's, fantastic. He's a stud, right? There are things that, like, I think naturally things will break down for him. And he's more of a guy actually where if his first read is not clear, then you get into a little bit of a mess. And I don't see that with Justin Fields in the same way. And so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of like Trevor Lawrence. For him, a lot of times things need to be perfect. And he performed so much better, at least in my opinion. He performed a lot better when he had T. Higgins and he had Justin Ross. And then this year, it wasn't as impressive, right? And if you watch that Ohio State game, there are times where he's just kind of like freaks out. He blanks out and then he like throws the ball, and he threw like 2 interceptable passes that were dropped by stupid defensive backs. But, this idea that like when things get intense for him, and he's very calm all the time, right? I was actually at the Alabama Clemson national championship game that he won. And getting to watch that game, it's like, oh, this guy is so cool. He can do whatever he wants, right? But for him, they keep the offense pretty simple, right? A lot of things are one read. And you saw this too with, sorry to be all over the place, but we saw this too with Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a Clemson offense thing. And that's what I've learned too. They're very quick in the way that they get the ball out.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic for quarterbacks, right? Because it's all about rhythm and timing and being as quick as possible in all of your reads. And Trevor can do all of that fantastic. It's when things break down that I have more of a question, because he does, in my mind, he doesn't make clutch plays all the time. I also think Trevor Lawrence is an underrated runner, and so there's plenty of reasons to like him. He's fantastic in terms of the way that he'll like make defenders miss or use blockers in that sense. So love Trevor Lawrence. To have him at 3, people are like angry that that's disrespectful, but it's about weighting different things, right? So it's for me, the improvisation that I feel when I watch Zach Wilson, I think that's a lot more impressive in terms of what he's able to do off platform and all that kind of stuff. And so the mentality that he brings, at least in my understanding, is more valuable, right? And so like a guy can figure out how to go through reads and make quick decisions and throw the ball on time. That's not hard. The hard stuff is, who is he mentally in his own head when he needs to make a play off platform? Can he still make that play? Does he have the daring and the guts to make those decisions? And I think Zach Wilson is unique in that way, probably to his own fault, right? People will make dumb decisions, but that's Josh Allen ruined quarterback scouting for everybody forever, right? Because we'll always be able to say this guy who's, a total buffoon and has a rocket arm is able to now take over the NFL because he figured it out.
Yeah.
He figured out how to use his guts to his advantage, right? And he's, just arrogant in what he does. He can throw the ball wherever he wants, do whatever he wants to do. And Pat Mahomes is the same way, right?
Yeah.
The players that have the mindset of, just, screw it, right? If they can pull it off, they're the best players.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the question with Zach Wilson. So to me, he's more attractive because I don't see that same quality in Trevor Lawrence.
That's some fantastic insight. I mean, we always talk about, the game is mental, right? And the players that fail, like everyone that gets in the NFL, let's just be clear, they're top end, top flight, 99th percentile athletes, right? They didn't fail because they weren't athletic enough or talented enough. A lot of times it does come down to mental. And we have, frankly, the beauty of, like you said, for film is like, we have no insight into that analytics. All I can do is I can look at the numbers and I can say, this is what he completed. This is what the average guy did. This is how much better he did it. This is how he won. I try and look for those types of clues in the mentality of a player by looking at stuff like 24/7 rankings. Like 24/7 rankings for the most part for me is kind of useless. But what I do really love to see is when I see someone who is a very, very highly touted prospect coming out of high school and continue to exceed expectations at every stage of their collegiate career, because that tells me that they are mentally strong. They're mentally strong, especially someone like Justin Fields, who got relegated to the bench for Jake Fromm from State Farm, which is an absolute embarrassment, right? So, I mean, that's a big blow to your confidence. So to come back and go to another school and just play lights out from the moment you step on the field is some insight into his mentality. And, you talking about how they work off platform. We're always comparing guys to Hall of Famers, right? People want to jump to Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, who are the two of the best at creating something out of nothing. And then if you throw back in the good old days, you have guys like Brett Favre as well. And like you said, those are the guys that are special. So it's kind of interesting to hear that. People are going to get mad. Look, people have accepted that Trevor Lawrence is the 1.01 for many years now. But, there are question marks, right? And there's question marks everywhere. And would I be surprised if Justin Fields, kind of like outperformed him? I honestly think it's like a 50-50 from a fantasy perspective, just looking at what Justin Fields brings to the table. This guy's a 228-pound, 4.4 speed running quarterback. I mean, it's
the upside is unlimited with him.
It's insane. And
in a way that's more than Lawrence.
Yeah. So I absolutely. I mean, even someone like a Trey Lance later has like that type of upside. Obviously, a lot more risks. What would you do if if Justin Fields is available at 3 and the Niners go with Mac Jones? Are you hanging up your Niners fan cleats, or are you staying strong with Shanahan?
No, but I'd be heartbroken. Yeah, we're Niners fans through the Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers era and all that stuff. So
yeah. That's a painful one.
But so if you were to ask me, like, how are you drafting these guys as a real NFL GM, I would seriously take Justin Fields 1, and I would take Trevor Lawrence 2, because I'm not risking my job on Zach Wilson the same way, right? But from where I'm at in the spaceship, I was like, hey, we're already shooting all these rockets off. Let's go to the moon. Like, what are we doing here?
Absolutely. Fighting for upside in quarterback is never a bad idea, which is why you just cannot draft Mac Jones, no matter how pro-ready people think he is. That's my take on it anyways. I want to get your thoughts on Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance, small school, tiny sample, but incredible upside with his legs, which is what we care about for fantasy. How did you go about breaking down this prospect? Like, do you see him as one of the riskiest prospects in the class, like everyone else says, or do you think there's a little bit more to his game than people are giving him credit for?
Yeah, he's tough. No, I do think he's risky. I don't think he's going to bust. The question is, I think with a lot of quarterbacks, is why do guys bust?
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a lot in the mental makeup of can you carry a team and how do you lead that I think is more relevant. And
Mhm.
from a Trey Lance standpoint, if you have all the tools, right, and you work hard, then there's no reason to be a big fan. And he's got better tools than a Mac Jones. The guy, he's got a bazooka arm. He has the best arm in the class, right? And
Oh wow.
so, I like he'd be. I think, yeah, the upside again, same thing, right? The upside with him is sky high. So yeah, fan of
Would
Trey
you
Lance. Developmentally, like yeah, I'd rather take him than anybody else. Mac Jones down.
would you rather? So you would rather if you were San Francisco and Justin Fields is gone?
Trey Lance, yeah,
Yeah, you would take. Okay, cool,
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Trey Lance, and again, I'm not like a film guy or anything, but I've watched some film on him,
yeah,
and his arm does does really pop off. I mean, the guy has an
yeah,
absolute cannon,
yeah.
and I'm just absolutely adoring the upside that he brings on the ground. So it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting class. It's an exciting quarterback class. I mean, realistically speaking, like 4 quarterbacks should go 1, 2, 3, 4. But NFL teams probably aren't the most rational there, so it might not happen that way. But that would be the most rational thing to me. So it's an exciting class to kind of jump into. I just hope that this doesn't turn into like another really propped up class that everyone loves, and then it turns into like the Sam Darnold one. So let's hope we don't get
Oh
there,
yeah.
but
Who else
we'll
was in
see.
that class? Who else was
Baker
there?
Mayfield, right?
Yeah.
Sam
Okay.
Darnold. Fuck, why am I blanking on who the other ones are?
Was
But
Lamar in that class?
oh yeah. Lamar Jackson, Josh
Lamar was
Rosen,
there.
Josh
Oh,
Rosen, the
Josh Rosen.
forgotten, the
Oh
forgotten one.
man. Yeah.
I remember
Brutal.
back in the day, people said Josh Rosen had like the best arm talent in the entire class. That's what people
Yeah.
said. That goes to show, man. Just it's hard to
Uh,
evaluate this game.
yeah. There's a character thing about Josh Rosen, right? In terms
Yeah,
of like, hey, people coming out and saying, "Oh, this guy's a turd,"
yeah.
right?
People were saying he didn't
Yeah.
care because
Right.
he comes from a rich family, and he said like football is not life, and
Yeah.
everyone was like up in arms. Kind of like what kind of happened with like Trevor Lawrence. People are starting to question whether or not this guy has has an appetite for the game, or if he just like doesn't care as much. And then same shit with freaking Justin Fields. People question his work ethic, even though this guy literally threw 6 touchdowns with a fucking broken rib.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. People will say anything. I personally I don't like to go after people's character because we don't know jack shit about them. Like I don't know anything about these
Sure.
prospects. All I know is that they're trying to fucking play for their dreams. That's all I know. It's all I need to know, and I'm gonna move
Right.
on
Yeah.
from there and let the teams evaluate for me.
Yeah. Like when we were talking about draft capital, right? That's the value of draft capital. It's the
Yeah,
interviews,
yeah,
right? It's the interviews
absolutely.
that will tell you a lot about a guy, right? So
Absolutely. If
yeah,
an
because
NFL team drafts DeVonta Smith, it tells me they don't give a shit about that he's 166 pounds, and I
right.
probably will not either. So
Yeah.
that's kind of draft capital is everything. I mean, we all like sit back and try and make fun of teams and whatever, but at the end of the day, like we're all using draft capital because that is the
Yeah.
biggest indicator for any model. So it's definitely one of the biggest inputs. All right, let's talk about wide receivers, man. This is my favorite position because it got a lot of numbers in there. A lot of analytics. It's probably the most numbers based position, and it's fun because it's the I would say in football, even though everything's super super reliant, super dependent, right? O line, quarterback, running back, everything. I'd say like wide receiver is like the most isolated because you're mano a mano, kind of not really, but kind of against the cornerback, and you can kind of evaluate them that way. And we have all the numbers to back it up. But I guess you talked about you have like 5 major categories. What are the major categories you look at when you're breaking down film for a wide receiver?
Yeah. So release, route, receiving, yards after catch, and explosiveness are the grades.
What's receiving?
So receiving is like his catching ability.
Mm,
So not just does he have good hands, not
hmm
just his hand technique, but does he win over defenders? Does he win through contact? All of those kinds of things. So catch radius is one I think that's interesting to me in terms of how that plays in, right?
hmm
Because it changes the way that you evaluate a guy like Rondale Moore,
hmm
right? Where you say, he's a great athlete. He can jump 42 inches, right? But his catch radius is smaller, even though he's extending outside of his frame or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking in terms of what's the defender thinking, and can he win over defenders, right? So Rondale Moore's catch radius is not as valuable as somebody else, who's bigger.
Yeah.
So things like that. That's what goes into receiving.
Got it. That's interesting. So this class, I mean, one of my favorites. I know he's one of your favorites, Jaylen Waddle. I mean, Jaylen
Yes.
Waddle people comp Tyreek Hill and look for Tyreek Hill way too often. The amount of draft capital people have burned trying to get Tyreek Hill is insane to me. And I will never comp anyone to a Tyreek Hill because I truly believe he's a unicorn. He's a one of one. But having said that, if there was one player out of all the classes that I've seen so far to warrant that type of discussion, not comp, that type of discussion, I think is Jaylen Waddle, just because of what he's able to do, how quick he is, how he stops and goes so quickly and literally leaves defenders on skates. That reminds me of Tyreek Hill. And a lot of haters are going to say this, that they say he's just another Henry Ruggs, right? What do you have to say to those haters? What is there to love about Jaylen Waddle? What do you see when you watch him play?
Yeah, I think the analytics guys are going to get torched on Jaylen Waddle if they're worried about any sort of breakout, whatever BS. So there's two players in the NFL that defensive backs like piss their pants when they like line up against them, and that's not just the big guys, but in terms of like pure speed, where they give them like cushion just out of fear.
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill and then Will Fuller. And
yeah, so, Will Fuller, the god,
Will Fuller is he's terrifying for people. Yeah, Malcolm Butler is like so scared of him. Every time that like he'll give him a 12, 13-yard cushion. Jaylen Waddle has that kind of speed, but it's more relevant than Henry Ruggs' speed because he knows how to throttle it down and he knows how to shift direction better.
Yeah.
And so you'll see like one of the challenges with Ruggs, and I had my grade too high on him, but he doesn't make great cuts. He's not perfect at stopping in the way that Jaylen Waddle is. And so, yeah, not to say that he's perfect, but yeah, he's much better in terms of his change of direction. And today you said you posted a tweet where it was like, or it was yesterday, Jaylen Waddle he's the best route runner. He's elite, right? And I totally agree with that. So what Jaylen Waddle does so well is he's basically telekinetic with the way that he controls his speed. Like he knows he's fast. The defender knows he's fast. And so the head fakes he's able to put in or the pace that he's able to create, it's special. And there's very few receivers that do this in the NFL. And I think Will Fuller and Tyreek Hill are some of those guys that have that ability. Jaylen Waddle does those things. And to me, that's why he's up there. So yeah, upside wise, he could end up being the top receiver.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all chase upside and everyone says it every year. Right. And the thing is, like, to chase upside, you got to pay a price, and you recognize that there's risk in his production profile. I've recognized that there's risk there, and I'm simply saying I don't care, because what he can do, I think this is the point, right? Like anyone can be fast. Henry Ruggs is really fast, right? Every year there's someone that blazes the 40, but there's very few people that understand how to threaten with their speed without actually having to go 100%, right? I think that's what Waddle does really well, and at least based on my very novice eyes, what he's been able to do in college. So I'm excited to see where he goes. And from a numbers perspective, I mean, I get it. If you want to just look at static numbers and look at his pure market share and all that stuff, is not great. But when you really break down the context, like
he got hurt.
He got hurt in the first 4 games. He was an absolute monster. His yards per team pass attempt was insane, and so was DeVonta Smith. But he was outproducing DeVonta Smith for those four games. And then as a true freshman, like, he was balling out. He was playing with a bunch of NFL first-round talent wide receivers, and he was the second most productive wide receiver on the team. And that doesn't even account for the fact that he's the best punt returner in college. And I'm not a film grinder, but I've watched so much Jaylen Waddle punt returns, and the way he just like sets people up it's mesmerizing, I would say. And I think that's the most tantalizing thing about him. And I'm like my other analyst compatriots, do love the numbers, but in this particular scenario, I think when you put everything in context and know that he's probably going to be the second wide receiver off the board after Jamar Chase, that's my guess. He's going to go top 10. And so when you put all that together, what you get is actually a pretty good profile still. It's not one where it's not the same as Henry Ruggs. I think I was vehemently against Henry Ruggs coming out, right? But I am putting my name, my pro scout name, my family legacy and my scouting lineage behind Jaylen Waddle, because I think he's an exciting player, and I love rooting for players like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good guy to put your name behind, and it's good that you're able to tell the difference, right?
Yeah.
But for me, the only question with him is his ankle.
Yeah.
Because that's a game changer, right? So we're talking about like overall, like, who is this player, right? You're now having to account for something that's going to change. Does this take away from his speed? Is he now 95% of what he was before?
Yeah.
Right? Does that change his game? We have no idea.
That's a great point.
And so that's really unique. And so for me, like, risk wise, I'm gonna take him, obviously, but
Yeah.
I'm aware of, this is more of a gamble, right? He's a depth guy. He's not my like wide receiver 2 or whatever.
What does Mayor of Flavortown say about his injury?
Yeah. So now we're between myself and the mayor,
Uh-huh.
and we added a new guy, Mark Aguilar, right? So
Okay.
he's our physical therapist. So now we have a pretty comprehensive injury team.
Very nice.
Um, and yeah, he's been telling me that the recovery should like be expected to go well.
Okay.
Overall, like a lot of these players end up doing okay. Dak
Okay.
had, I think, a pretty similar injury, right?
Yeah.
You're not worried about it as much, but yeah, every body is different. And
Absolutely.
that's a really unique thing. So you don't know until you see it on the field. And I have my own personal hypothesis that I did post to Twitter, and got some people upset because it's sad.
You're
But
doing something right, man. When you upset
my
people on Twitter,
yeah,
that's the way to go.
my hypothesis is that it will matter and it will show up in an ACL injury or something like that,
Mm,
upstream, down the road. So Odell Beckham broke his ankle,
yeah.
and then 3 years later he tore his ACL, same leg. Saquon Barkley, high ankle sprain, tore his ACL, same leg. So
Hmm.
there's a bit of a theme, and maybe it's just because New York has crappy rehab therapists. But in terms of the way that you like when you injure the tissue,
Yeah.
then that changes the way that your body absorbs that force. And so
Hmm.
unless you regain the absorptive ability into the ankle joint, then you're going to transfer that load somewhere else. And so guys end up with ACL tears, or they rotate a little bit differently, and that modifies things for them. So
Yeah, we see
it'll
that a
be
lot.
interesting to see the way Waddle goes.
That's a great point. Honestly, I hadn't really thought about that before. It's definitely something to consider. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, we always like look at these guys and we forget that they're humans, right? Like they're doing superhero type shit,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's still a mortal body, and they're going through the punishment. So it's always kind of good to take a step back and put that in perspective. So it's definitely another risk factor. But man, I'm fucking swinging on this guy because I love watching him play. So that's where
Yeah.
I'm at
So
with
if
him.
if at his pro day he ran a sub 4.4,
Yeah,
or he ran 4.45, I'd
yeah.
be like, oh, yeah, I'm in, right? But I think because he didn't run, in the back of my mind, I have a little bit of question. But
Yeah.
NFL team's going to gamble, and they know the medical whatever.
That's where draft cap comes into play, man. If a
Yeah,
team goes up and takes him top 10, that
wide
they're just
receiver
spending
two, wide
spending
receiver
millions of
two.
dollars on him. That tells me all I need to know. Next up, I guess the poster child of film versus analytics debates is DeVonta Smith. DeVonta Smith, BMI doubters hate him. BMI people do not like DeVonta Smith. They think he's
Yeah,
going to step on a field and literally disintegrate when he gets touched by a defensive back. That's the feeling that I get from BMI truthers. Film grinders love him. They say he's the best Heisman winning wide receiver, route savant, incredibly intelligent.
yeah.
National championship Alabama team, one of the most productive wide receivers this year. Where do you lie? What do you think about DeVonta Smith? Does size matter to you at all? Does that concern you, or is he just too good of a player for you to be like, all right, look, he's an outlier. I recognize it, but he's a savant, so I'm going for it.
Yeah, I love him. So he's my wide receiver 2 in the class. I
Mm-hmm.
do like Jamar Chase over him, but from a the question of does his size matter? The NFL can decide if it matters, right? An offensive coordinator can play him at the Z, and then they can move him around and use him a little bit differently. He's competitive at the catch point, right? And so his size doesn't matter in the sense of he has great leaping ability. He's
Yep.
confident through the catch. He's a little bit different than Jerry Jeudy in that way.
His catch radius is huge, right? His arms are fucking long.
Yeah, he's got some good arm length, good hand size, all that kind of stuff, and he's strong. There's a difference between obviously being heavy and then being strong.
Yeah.
So he's functionally strong, but there are he can get pushed around, bullied before the ball goes up in the air, and so that would be your only question. The thing about him is that he's too quick for a lot of guys, and so the release hasn't really shown up as a problem in the SEC because he just torches guys.
Yeah.
So I recently tweeted about J.C. Horn, the South Carolina cornerback, being 33-inch arms, 40 whatever inch for 4.4, just a beast, right? Everybody loves him because of who he is athletically. DeVonta Smith destroyed him. Just absolutely pooped on him. So this idea that what's it going to look like with when he's in the NFL and guys are more physical and all this stuff, he's right there. So not worried.
Yeah, I definitely see that part as well. It's like, we've seen enough Alabama games, and they play in the SEC, and DeVonta Smith is constantly going up against the best corners. So, hopefully NFL caliber corners. So I don't think, I mean, it worked there, right? I don't really buy into the thing of like, hey, he needs to put on 20 pounds to be good, because whatever he did in college was obviously working. So there's no reason to change up what's working, fix what's not broken. So I don't really care about the size as long as NFL teams don't care about the size. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. I mean, honestly, during this whole fiasco of like BMI, Twitter going ham against DeVonta Smith, if anything, he has moved up for me versus moved down, because I've just talked to more and more film people that have explained to me what he does well and what he does good. And I never really cared about weight anyways, but the fact that, more people are telling me, smarter people than me are telling me that it doesn't matter. And if the draft capital is there, it doesn't matter, then, chances are it doesn't matter. And I tweeted out something today, which was to the tune of like, I would much rather bet on an outlier that like we haven't seen before versus betting on an outlier where, like a Van Jefferson, where we know his profile just sucks and he's just not going to succeed. Right. It's like people say like, oh, we never had a wide receiver like that small do that well. I'm like, that's fine. Right. That's fine. Because he might be the first, because we don't have enough data about the guys that have gone in the first round that are that light, that have been as productive as him. So we don't have that type of profile. We don't have enough data points to really compare that against. So it's hard to make that argument versus, someone like Van Jefferson. We've seen a bunch of fifth year seniors go in and suck. So that's the difference for me.
Sure.
So I'm getting more and more. I'm warming up to the idea of a DeVonta Smith. So might end up on a couple of my teams. I'm not promising anything, but he might get there. But let's talk about the last guy, Ja'Marr Chase. To me, in a league of his own, because from a numbers perspective, I mean, there really aren't many holes to poke in his profile. From a size perspective, he's obviously, an alpha size, and color me a film grinder, but the film also tells me that he's pretty fucking good, with the exception of a couple of guys that go on Twitter saying he has no vertical speed, which has now been quashed after his pro day. So Ja'Marr Chase, what do you think? I don't see many holes, but you having studied the film, I'm sure you have some concerns. I know you have him as your wide receiver one as well, but what are some of those challenges you think he will face transitioning to the NFL?
Yeah. Honestly, I think there are film guys who are like, oh, Ja'Marr Chase doesn't separate or doesn't. I disagree. He's one of the better improvisers. We talk about Matt Carrasio.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about this problem solver paradigm, right?
Yep.
And this idea that like, Ja'Marr Chase figures things out really well.
Yeah.
And so, he destroys people in press, right? And we can complain about like, oh, well, he's, fighting with them too long or whatever, right? But he's winning. He's winning the rep. And he's creating separation for himself because of his physicality and because of his tenacity. And he's able to solve problems or figure out, hey, here's what I need to do differently in the middle of the play. And so for me, like I have all the confidence in Ja'Marr Chase from that standpoint. I don't really have any questions on him, actually.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be great.
Here's like my take on this whole Ja'Marr Chase, DeVonta Smith thing, right? There's different ways to win. We've said that many times. There's also different ways to get separation, right? And people, when they think about separation, what they think about is like a DeVonta Smith who runs a really crisp route and puts a defender on his knees, and then he's like 10 yards downfield, right? When I watched Ja'Marr Chase, what I saw was someone that didn't do that, but what he did do was he creates a separation at the moment that is needed to get the ball to him, because he's this guy is strong. Like he's as strong as an ox, man. The way he like gets that last second of separation from a defender, like right as the ball is arriving to win. I think that's what we're talking about. I don't know. That's what I see is that he's not necessarily the one that will break your ankles, but he's going to win like AJ Brown wins, is that he's so physical and at the catch point that defenders really have no shot against him. And I think that translates to the NFL because he's playing against, NFL caliber corners, but he's also just strong as a fucking fox. It doesn't matter where he's playing. He's going to be one of the strongest guys around. So I'm a big fan of Ja'Marr Chase. I think in a single quarterback format, Ja'Marr Chase is the 1.01 ahead of every running back, because I have some questions about the running back class, but I think he's that type of prospect. I'm excited to draft Ja'Marr Chase. I hope you are too. And once we get our first Ja'Marr Chase shares, we can have a drink over that one. It's going to be an exciting day.
Yeah. AJ Brown is the right comp.
Yeah.
Again, not really an elite separator in the way that we'll think about things classically, but winner at the catch point. So big fan.
All right, let's move on to running backs. And running back, like you said, it's an interesting position to evaluate. And you have J Moyer now on the team to help you guys with that as well. But what are some things you are looking for at the running back position? Because this is an area, a position, in my opinion, where film like really takes over. Like I trust film on running back I trust film everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but running
Yeah.
back is a position where like the numbers just aren't there yet. You know, I haven't really seen any great analytical models that are like, yeah, this tells me the running back's gonna be good. But I have seen like time and time again really good film evaluators like J Moyer, like yourself, like Graham Barfield, who have approached it from a film perspective and have found success. So, what are those traits you're looking for?
How many hurdles does he have on film? And does he make any one-handed catches?
Darwin Thompson, baby.
Yes.
Darwin
Yeah.
Thompson
Oh,
hurdles.
I love Darwin Thompson. Yeah,
The GOAT.
he's the Saquon Barkley of Sharkhandrick Wests. But yeah, yes. So for me, it's like splash plays, right? How athletic is this guy in terms of, and then like versatility, right? What is his in-game usage going to be? That's huge for the running back, right? If he's not involved in the passing game, he's irrelevant in fantasy, essentially.
Yep.
And so, what kind of capability does he have?
Unless you're Derrick Henry. Unless
you're Derrick Henry. Yeah, very, very specific, Mack truck requirements to be fantasy relevant. But yeah, I would say that the question oftentimes, and this is what was one of the more interesting things about Jonathan Taylor. But the question was, can a player be a receiver? Or can he be involved in the passing game? Versus, is he going to be better than everybody else in the passing game in his offense?
Yeah.
So like, you look at a guy like Jonathan Taylor and you say, well, yeah, he can catch the ball, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to, Nyheim Hines is going to go away, right?
Yeah,
Nyheim Hines is now always going to be involved. And so that's got to factor in some way, right? Didn't make a huge impact. It ended up being, totally fine.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, in the running back position, when I'm looking at a guy, I have a pretty high value on his receiving ability. What is that? Can he beat out other third down satellite backs in order to take on a full 3-down role? That's becoming more and more rare, but that's why it's more important. And more
that is a fantastic point, because we miss that all the time, because we see in the players what we want to see, right? You really love a player like Jonathan Taylor, and Jonathan Taylor, I fucking loved Jonathan Taylor. But if you were rational, you had to have known that he's not going to come in and be a 3-down workhorse like right off the bat, right? Like a bell cow. That just wasn't really in the cards, because even though he can do it, there's a difference between being able to do it, like you said, and really excelling and being better than everyone else. So that's always a question mark there for running backs. We got to always try and rationalize and come back down to earth and bring our expectations down. And I have to do it all the time, because I'm like, holy fuck, I love Cam Akers. This guy is a fucking stud. This guy's the best thing since sliced bread. I think he's amazing, right? Yeah. But the usage isn't there in the passing game. You got to ask yourself why. So I think it's really important to kind of grasp that concept there. I want to ask you something before we jump into the 2021 prospects. What is your take on like generational stuff? Did you think Jonathan Taylor was a generational prospect?
Yes. You
do. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, generally. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's okay. What is a generation? A generation for me is 3 years, and a generational prospect would be a top 5 player within the last 3 years.
Okay. Well, you've defined it very clearly, so that makes sense. But I'm talking about the irrational talks we have on Twitter, where we don't have such defined parameters, right? We just everyone has their own definition. So if yours doesn't fit mine, then you're wrong. So that's what I'm talking about. When I think about generational, I'm thinking about like probably longer than 3 years. I'm thinking like the last. I'm not really thinking about it in terms of a time period, so to speak. Except now that you've put it that way, it just makes so much more sense to think about it like the best prospect within the last 3 years. Like maybe I have to think about it like the best is he the top 3, top 4 prospect within the last 10 years. And if you put it that way, then yeah, he would define. But to me, it's like I just see Saquon Barkley. I'm like, that guy is generational. I know that guy's a generational talent.
Absolutely.
And I look at Jonathan Taylor. I'm like, this guy's elite. He's one of my favorites. But it's hard for me to think of someone as a generational talent when multiple teams pass on him twice. That's like the hurdle I can't get over mentally. I'm like, hey, like NFL evaluators should see that this guy's generational. If he's generational, like why don't they see that? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But that's interesting to hear it that way. So for the 2021 class, though, from my perspective, like I think how do I put this lightly? I think it stinks, right? And like, look, there's 3 guys, and I'm like, I'm somewhat excited about them, but this is not 2020. I'm not jumping out of my shoes for any of them. In fact, I would take most of the 2020 guys over everyone in this 2021 class. But I see you have Najee Harris as the running back 1. Does age matter to you? Does it matter to you that he was a 23-year-old beating on college kids versus like someone like a Travis Etienne who was doing it a bit earlier? But from a film perspective, I understand that he has some holes. Like, what is your take on Najee Harris, Travis Etienne? Are they close, or are they tiers apart?
They're different tiers for me.
Hmm.
In terms of age, it doesn't matter to me with prospect evaluation because we're getting back to that idea of who is this player when he enters the NFL, right?
Yep.
So he'll be the youngest guy in the NFL.
Hmm.
It matters to me in the sense of like dynasty value, right?
Yep.
He's got a year off of value,
Hmm.
and the conversation of well, J.K. Dobbins versus Najee Harris is now interesting,
Yeah.
whereas before it wouldn't have been. So in that sense, age matters. The separation for me and Najee and Etienne is pretty far because I think Najee is way more versatile.
Yeah. And is that just like when you say versatile, you're talking about like his receiving ability, or are you
Yeah.
talking about his versatility even just in running the ball itself?
Probably both, but I don't think that there's anything that he can't do.
Hmm.
So, from that standpoint, I have him, pretty close to Jonathan Taylor in terms of the film grade.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting. Interesting.
yeah. So JT, I had him last year. He was like a 90. So he was in that like, hey, this is elite, obviously. But because Najee is more versatile in the passing game, right? Those weights
Yeah.
push him up into this, territory. So yeah, where are you at with ETN and
I have Najee one
Najee?
as well.
Okay.
Because like I said, I approach from a film perspective more so for the running back position. And I
Yeah.
don't really care about the age thing either, especially for running back. If he gets first round draft capital, like that's really all that's gonna matter at the end of the day, anyways. So I like you. I really, really heavily weight versatility, especially in the receiving game. And Najee is a receiver, whereas Travis Etienne is he's like a screen guy. So it goes back
Yeah.
to that thing where you said like Najee could go to a team and he could be the best receiving back on that team.
Yeah.
But Travis Etienne could go to a team, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think it'd be more than likely even that he goes to a team where there's either another 1 to 2 down grinder to help him out, or another third down specialist that'll be a better receiver than he is.
Right.
So I too have Najee, and because it's before the NFL draft, I'm always going to lean the guy that's more versatile and that's less susceptible to landing spot detriments than someone that isn't. So maybe that changes after the draft. Like if Tan goes to, San Francisco 49ers, I'm not saying that's going to happen because I don't know. But I think that would be a great situation for him. But I think Najee could go to a lot of places. I think you go to Miami, it'd be great. You go to Steelers, it'd still be pretty good. You go to a lot of places. So I have Najee as well, followed by Etienne, followed by Javonte. So very, very similar to you. What about Etienne versus Javonte? Because I've seen a lot of people go with Javonte over Etienne, and it seems like the Etienne hate is carried over a little bit too much for me. How close do you have those two prospects in your rankings?
Yeah, pretty close. So I think they're in the same tier, all that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. I think I think Michael Carter is also in that tier.
Interesting.
Um, so yes, I think it's important to say I do think ETN's the hate has gone too far.
Mm-hmm.
That he is overlooked for a reason people don't like. They say he needs everything to be perfect. He needs a good offensive line. He needs vision and all that kind of stuff is not up to par. But if he does get it, if he lands in a place with a good offensive line, he's going to be great. His contact balance is underrated, and his lateral agility, he can make enough moves to run somebody over. And so I really like Etienne in that aspect. He's kind of a funny mover. His center
Yeah,
of gravity is super low, and he's a heel striker.
Yeah.
So like all of that is really interesting.
Dude, I was
Like you
literally
see how
just thinking about that. I didn't know how to
yeah.
describe it, but when he runs, he looks like he doesn't look like he runs as fast as he does. That's the best way
Right.
that I can describe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's because his hips are anchored to the ground, and he like drags himself like he's like, yeah, like he is the sled. Not just
Yeah.
that he's carrying a sled, but he's just like the sled that like moves through. And yeah,
Yeah, but he is an
really
interesting
interesting.
prospect. So if he
Yeah.
falls, I will be there to catch all those shares, no problem. I mean, you mentioned Michael Carter. I know J Moyer is super high on Michael Carter too. Does he
Yeah,
have Michael Carter ahead of Javonte?
he does.
He
Michael
does, right?
Carter.
Yeah.
Michael Carter has his highest phone grade actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is it about? Like, what do you both see in Michael Carter that some of us novices are not seeing?
So I follow Jay on this actually. Footwork and vision are special, and so the way that he's setting people up and the way that he understands what's going on, I think it's unique, really compared to the rest of the class probably. With Jay's model, the way that he built it out, right? He's very heavy vision,
Yeah.
right? Clyde was such a big love for him
Yeah.
because of what he saw in Clyde's like understanding of the game. For me, it's a good amount lower, and so Michael Carter will show up lower. But I do think
Interesting.
in the overall conversation, right? Hey, how do we quantify these things?
Yeah.
And then we get together, we say, hey, what are the results? Let's pool those results. What was the most important in terms of fantasy, right? And so we can be able to say, now that we're quantifying all these different traits, now we can say, hey, well, vision matters this much. Receiving ability matters this much.
Yeah.
So once we get there, it'll be a couple of years, but that's where we're at. So Jay's love of running back's vision, puts him higher up. And so I trust Jay on like everything that he's saying when he's saying like, oh, this guy doesn't see things as well as he needs to.
Yeah.
And I kind of rely on that when I'm doing my own grade. But
No,
Michael Carter's special vision.
Yeah, he breaks down, like I said at the beginning, J Moyer breaks down vision in video format like no one else I've seen on Twitter. And it's a great learning experience for anyone out there. So make sure you guys go check out those videos. So it seems like you guys are on the same page when it comes to vision. You just weight it a little bit less, which is why you have the difference in your rank. So that's interesting, man. Like it's always cool to see. That's why it's so important, I think, for film folks to break things down this way, because then what it allows other people to do is say, well, I don't think vision matters as much. I think speed matters as much. I think this matters as much. And being able to see you guys break it down and then see how you value, and then becomes, like you said, it becomes a competition. You guys will finally come up with ranks that actually matter, not the Fantasy Pros accuracy rankings. I don't really care about those, but these types of film breakdown rankings will be super cool to see, because they'll be like, yo, that film guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. Let's listen to him. I think it's going to be awesome. Once you guys build that out, I'm be the first number one stan on that. Just promoting the fuck out of that, because that's one thing I think that's really missing. So it's really cool to see you guys kind of continue to build that out. All right, so Michael Carter. I guess my other question for you is like, after, because you guys have Michael Carter there, so let's throw him in there. But after Michael Carter, it gets dicey, I would say, for this class for me. Or are there prospects that you think that are there that are being overlooked?
I like Kenny Gainwell. Again, we're talking versatility. He's a good weapon downfield, and he timed faster than I thought he would. I think he's a 4.5 guy, but 4.42, that sounds good to me. But overall, I like his game. Hayden Winks pointed out that he's got questionable balance. So yeah, Kenny Gainwell is an interesting prospect, but I do like him overall, and I think the versatility is going to matter in the NFL. And Kylan Hill, I think, is interesting too. But again, these are once you get past Najee, these are depth, these are committee backs. Yeah, you get excited about Michael Carter like you get excited about Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Where he comes in, Jamal Williams and then DeVonta Mays, they're all like, oh, we just need a running back. We're taking all these guys, right? One of them will show up, right? And so, I think it was 4th, 5th, and then 6th round, those guys went. And you're like, hey, Aaron Jones, like, I believe in him, right? He was great at UTEP, all this stuff. It's a committee thing, right? And so he's going to deal with all this trajectory of like, oh, now I got to battle all these guys to get to the top. And then I finally get to the top, they pay me money, and then they draft AJ Dillon or whatever, right? And so it's like, Michael Carter might never carry the load in the same way that Javonte Williams would, in terms of the way that an NFL team is going to invest. And so that's actually why Javonte Williams is ranked higher for me, even though, from maybe like a film or vision standpoint, I'm like, oh, Michael Carter's great, right? The way that the NFL is going to view this guy, I already know is it's going to be a little bit lower. It's going to be like an Aaron Jones, where he's going to always have somebody else related to him.
Yeah, and look, that's okay too, right? We don't have 20 workhorses in the NFL. We only have 15 workhorses. So like eventually you're gonna have to get the committee guy. So at the end of the day, at that point, you want to bet on the most talented guy to win out. So it's important to understand these running backs as well. You can't always have Jonathan Taylors and Saquon Barkley's on your roster, even though I do have both those on my roster. So shout out to my roster right there, but it's not always possible. All right. So that's the running back. I want to talk about tight ends, because I noticed you have Kyle Pitts very, very high. And, we've talked about it on Twitter. Is he the greatest tight end prospect ever? Is he generational? Yes. But tell me what you see. Like what makes a Kyle Pitts different from, let's say, a Vernon Davis?
Oh, Vernon Davis couldn't catch. Vernon Davis is a 4.38, horse, right? He's a total monster. He can't catch. The coordination is not there. And so like everything that he's doing when he's going up for a ball, it's all about like cradling it to his chest, right? So his catch radius is smaller. Where Kyle Pitts, when he's reaching out, right, he can sky over anybody. And so being 6'6", I think Jimmy Graham's 6'7", right? So comparison wise, there's something to be drawn there in terms of like just how purely big he is. But Pitts is unique, I think, in terms of his route running ability. His release is more advanced than Jimmy Graham was. And so even though he's not going to be the same box out athlete that Jimmy was, I think you can get excited about him in that same kind of sense. The vertical speed of, what he ran, 4.45 or something like that.
Yeah, he's blazing.
Oh, it's nuts. So yeah, I mean, I'm all aboard Kyle Pitts. I'm very happy to take him. If I can get him inside, the top 5, I'll be happy with that.
Would you take him at 1.01 in a tight end premium?
Might. I've never played tight end premium, so I don't know what the real difference is. Quantify the difference.
So the real difference, and this is what the most people won't tell you, is in tight end premium, let's say it's 1.5 or 2 tight end premium, 2 PPR. The only difference is that the elite tight ends are way more valuable. It basically widens the scoring gap between like tight end 1 and like tight end 12 because it's a volume driven game, right? So all those guys are actual target hogs that are being treated like wide receivers are having a massive PP game points per game difference that compared to like a tight end 5 or tight end 6 or whatever. So all it does is really widen that gap. So if you truly believe, for example, in your case, that Kyle Pitts is that guy, is that, Kelsey, Gronk, Waller, right?
Yep.
Then that is a premium asset and arguably probably the greatest points per game advantage that you can have in that format.
So is the tight end, the elite tight end, worth a top 5 wide receiver?
Oh yeah. I mean, in my eyes, yeah, people still don't treat it as such. Top 5 probably, but like in my eyes, if you're actually really accounting for scoring and you really understand the mechanics of a tight end premium format, elite tight end should go ahead of every single wide receiver.
That's your answer.
Yeah, so you would. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then in single QB, you would take him at 1.02, right after Jamar Chase, basically.
I don't know. I'm figuring that out. I think I like Najee more. So for me, running backs are like super high value.
Yeah.
You only got so many of them. You throw them in there, and they all die halfway through the season. So you need a load of good ones. And so I would take Najee before Kyle Pitts. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, but definitely if you get him anywhere in the top 5, you're like ecstatic about that player because he's that type of player, and we cannot compare him to all the other rookie tight ends that stunk because he's not he's on above their level basically.
Yeah. Well, also like who cares about how they do their rookie year? You're holding on to an asset that's going to be one of the best tight ends for 10 years of his career.
Yeah, that's the thing that I definitely agree with. And I'll tell you why I'm not like super hyped about getting in on a Kyle Pitts, because if I think about it from I don't think he's gonna lose value. Like that I see people tweet and say I'm gonna buy him cheaper next year. I think you guys are fucking dreaming. You're not getting Kyle Pitts cheaper next year than you are this year, because anyone that drafted him is not trading him away for cheaper. I think you're dreaming.
Not a chance.
Yeah. But what I think about it is more like, what is the value gain he can have versus like another running back, like you said, like a Najee or a Jamar Chase or one of these top end wide receivers. And I'm thinking about that in terms of opportunity cost, like which one grows faster. And historically speaking, wide receivers and running backs tend to do a little bit better in ADP gain than tight ends. But if you truly believe in the player and you need a tight end, there's worse moves you can make than to invest in an asset that's not going to decrease in value between now and next year. So I think that's kind of how I think about it. I know there's many like you who are like full all in, ready to swing on tight end. I'm not there yet, but maybe I will once the generational comps start coming out for Kyle Pitts between now and the draft. Who knows? All right, so that's all we got for the evaluations. I want to just ask you a couple quick like fun questions to get a little bit of insight into where you're at. First of all, hashtag arrogant hands. How'd you come up with that? And who in this class is most representative of arrogant hands? I know our boy De'Ami Brown has some of that arrogant hands flavor when he threw up his hand before the ball was snapped to disrespect that man. But who in your eyes, represents that in this class?
Yeah, so I did not come up with arrogant hands. Arrogant hands is from, I believe, John Mara for the New York Giants when he was describing Odell Beckham's scouting game. And so he's like, hey, yeah, this guy has arrogant hands. And I heard that and I fell in love. He changed the way that we, talk about catching the football.
Yeah.
And so just that whole component of like, well, what is this new reality that now players are like all hopping into? How many guys are now catching the ball with one hand and training?
Yeah, exactly.
It's totally changed the culture.
Yeah.
And for me, in terms of the way that like understanding development and all the stuff that goes into that, it's fantastic. Because if you can catch a ball with one hand well, then you can catch it with two well, and it gives you a whole range of things to be able to do. So, arrogant hands is actually a separate trait for me, and it's highly rated. It's like
number one.
It's going to be higher for me than it is with any other scout that we have doing film grading. But so yeah, to me, it's all about the confidence in your ability to attack the football and your different ways of calculating it. Of course, like one-handed catch, the confidence of the one-handed catch. Does he snag it and pluck it, or is he tapping it to himself? It's a big difference there.
Yeah.
The size of your hands is going to be incorporated in that, right? And then also one thing about Odell that was really unique was that when he grabs the ball, he pulls it away from the defender.
Yeah.
So it's not just, oh, I'm catching it, I'm bringing it to me, but also I'm catching it and you're not even touching it. And that when I'm catching it and you're grabbing me or you're raking my arms, it's not moving. And you'll see that a lot. Or guys will catch the football and then they'll put it in one hand to hold it away, and that's another like unique type of confidence. So there's all those layers to it, and then also it becomes this stiff arm thing, right? The confidence that I have to like throw somebody's face into the dirt, right? And yeah, it just becomes all these other things that I'm really excited about. So hashtag arrogant hands. It does not belong to me. Does not belong to anybody. If you see a highlight that you like where you see arrogant hands, tag it with hashtag arrogant hands. And then when I do this once a week or whatever, right? I'm like, oh, what's the latest arrogant hands? And I just scroll and we'll look at all these great highlights together. That's the dream there.
All right, you heard it here first. You want to get your video seen by JPG, use the hashtag arrogant hands. I mean, man, Odell, I really hope he comes back and just blows us all away again. He's just such an exciting player, and
Yeah.
I don't think he's done. So let's see what happens with Odell. And one other player. So you've been very supportive of the player. I've been very vocally against this player, Drew Lock. I think he stinks.
Oh.
Why do you love Drew Lock so much? Please explain to me, what do you see in Drew Lock that the rest of us haters are missing?
Okay, so this is the problem with my eval, is that, and this is the same problem and the same reason why I like Zach Wilson, because I like guys who don't care
Okay.
at all.
He definitely doesn't care.
And so there's some value there to me, in terms of like the way that he like thinks about things. So obviously, like I think, well, okay, I should say obviously, his rookie season, he was actually like pretty good. He threw with anticipation. He threw like pretty accurately. And there are times where you could tell, like he threw a pick in the Houston Texans game his rookie season. Where I was like, what are you doing? There's nobody over there. You're throwing into triple coverage. That makes no sense. But he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it anyways. And it was a pick, it was a stupid throw, but they were up 37-8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you're like, yeah, maybe he's just testing it out. He's seeing what he can do in the NFL. This is actually a pretty talented guy in terms of the way that like he's like quick to make decisions and he has good arm talent. And he didn't figure it out, right? So he took that like concept of like, okay, this guy has the guts to be able to do something, right? But he never like put it together in his second year, and there was no like discernment or anything. And it like stopped making sense. If you watch the Broncos Falcons game, he was just like,
just didn't care.
He's throwing it straight to linebackers, like totally blind. And so you're like, okay, well, that didn't work, right? But in terms of my like tolerance for risk and my like assessment of somebody's ceiling, right? Drew Lock was, interesting to me.
Okay.
And so Zach Wilson, I like Zach Wilson the same way that I like Drew Lock, right? Except Zach can run. But I also like Johnny Manziel, right? So you have like this spectrum of like.
Yeah, I like Johnny Manziel too.
Totally, right? We have this spectrum of like, who's this guy going to develop? And with quarterbacks, it's very different because risk tolerance is such a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
And so fantasy wise, my risk tolerance is so much higher than it would be as an NFL GM.
Yeah.
Because in fantasy, the interceptions that you throw, unless your format is this new format that everybody's trying to do, and your format is still -2 for interceptions, and the team invested a high pick in him, he might be a good fantasy asset because he's going to be around, and the picks aren't really going to hurt you necessarily.
Yeah.
So
I play in 6 touchdown, -4 interception, -6 for pick 6. So
that's the way you should play.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can't tolerate that, but that makes sense. Look, you bet on a player. You saw what Drew Lock could be. He had some raw talent there that we can't deny, right? He's got some arm talent for sure. But now it's 2 years in, and we've seen that, there's basically been zero progression. So this is kind of where we cut our losses. So that makes sense to me. I can get behind that. And then last question for you. Who are some of the top analysts you follow and listen to on Twitter other than J Moyer and RB Kinney?
So non-astronaut guys that I really like, you're up there. Who haven't we mentioned, or who have you had on the podcast recently that I don't
I had Drew Ozenchuk at DF Bean Counter. I've had Angelo Fantasy. I've had Ray GQ.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, Ray's great. That's a great question. I should have thought of this. Name some of your favorite guys. How's that?
Well, I mean, I like I said, I love you guys at FF Astronauts. I like RB Keeney. I like Sam Hoppin. I like Cooper. I don't know if you know Cooper. Yeah, those are some of my favorites on the web. And then obviously, I like Graham Barfield and Matt Harmon, the big guys as well. Right, But I think in terms of like us more commoner folk, those are the guys that I kind of tend to go for.
Yeah. So film guys that I think of that I really enjoy, Nate Tice. He
Oh,
recently came
yes,
on.
Nate
He
Tice.
started this last year. He's a super fun follow. A really fun guy. I think he has an NFL background. His dad was Mike Tice,
Mm-hmm.
coached in the NFL. And so he's with the Athletic now or something like that. But
Yep.
he's great, and the way that he'll talk about things. So he's a lot of fun. And then Nick Pentecoff is a guy that's on our team.
Mm-hmm.
That he's started to get into the film, and he's just like post plays of guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been really fun to follow too. One thing about the like process of film that's intimidating for people is that it's like, oh, I have to watch a whole 5 to 10 minute game
Yeah.
in order to get into it, and I have to watch all these plays that don't matter, right? And so Nick has been recently, he's been a great follow because he just hops on. He's like, hey, here's all these plays that matter for quarterbacks. He's got all of Justin Fields' like good throws and bad throws, and he talks about all of them, right? It's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
Fred, right? And there's all these clips, and you don't have to do any scouting because he's got it all there for you. You can make your own decision. But he's a guy that he's totally changed his trajectory, and it's like awesome to follow.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely. It's hard.
Guys, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, breaking stuff down is definitely key because I mean, even pro scouts like myself don't have the time to kind of just go in for hours and hours and just build that up. So if anyone that's cutting film up and put it on Twitter in a easy to digest format, that's a big bonus. So, all right, so that's all we got for you. I want to say one, thank you for hopping on the pod, chop it up with me. I learned a lot. My pro scout career is definitely changed for the better after speaking with you, and you'll be seeing a lot of me in the film scout community going forward. But let the people know again, where exactly do they go to find you? Where exactly do they go to support you? Both, just from viewership and financially through the draft guide, whatever it is. Where do people go to get all this stuff?
Yeah, so I'm JetPackGalileo, like the astronomer, the
Mm-hmm.
famous astronomer. That's who I am. 457
Mm-hmm.
years old. And you can find us at Fantasy Football Astronauts on Twitter. So our website is ffastronauts.com. So check that out. We have a YouTube channel as well, a podcast, all that kind of fun stuff, Patreon, all that. But the big thing to check out would be the rookie guide.
Mm-hmm.
For us, that's our big project that we're really excited about. We're adding on to that. So the new additions that we're making to the guide, we're taking draft data. We're going to build landing spot grades, right? So it's like, okay, how does this player fit now into his team?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be able to see all of that in terms of the way that our experts and our analytics guys evaluate that. And then, we'll get that all together for you probably a week after the draft. So that's our big thing. That's a living project that's going to keep being updated. So
that's dope.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have those links all down below. So make sure you guys hop over, support them where you can. Like I said, this is Jetpack Galileo and the boys over at the FF Astronauts are definitely my top go-to when I'm trying to learn about film. So anything you hear from me likely has some influences from there. So make sure you guys get on over there, support them, follow them. And he's the homie is 457 years old, right? We got to help him and stay alive for as long as he can. We don't know how many years he's got left. So make sure you guys get on over there and support the channel, support the brand, support the friend of the pod. All right. That's all the time we got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel below. And you know how it is, man. Just hop on Twitter, shout out at me, shout out Jetpack Galileo. He's very, very engaging with people as well. Just don't be a fucking asshole, which I know is hard for people to do on Twitter. But go on there, engage in some nice discussions. I've had a ton of discussion with him, and he's been pretty open about that. So do your thing. And thanks for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
All right.